Okay.
Good morning, Fran.
Good morning, Marina. It's a beautiful December morning. The
It is
weather's
indeed.
warmer. Oh, just
Yes, well,
looking
I
forward
just
to
look at the
Christmas.
long-term forecast and it is, yep, it's that time of year when you actually should not look when you live in
So,
the cold country.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, this is our fourth episode of our Hypno Chicks podcast. And we are the Facebook group called Hopenning, which talks about hope that's happening if we open our hearts to it. And so we've covered hope, we've covered anxiety, and this is a brand new topic, which is all about finding our life's purpose. And so before we begin, I am Fran, and this is my friend Marina. And Marina, you will be our expert interview lady today. Take it away.
Thank you, Fran. Yes, I chose this topic because it is really close to my heart. And as we have discussed before in our studies, we have learned that there are three causes of depression. The one is lost connections. And I cannot emphasize this enough. What we as a society have faced over the last 2 years now, I think has opened up a big can of worms as far as the need for connection goes. And I think we're starting to see the ripple effect on that in a very big way. And the second one is the negative thoughts we keep on looping through our heads about ourselves. Like I used to be that person that would say, "Oh, Marina, you're so stupid." And it's those kinds of thoughts, and even going way deeper than just stupid. It can be you're not good enough, you're not worthy, and a lot of those horrible negative thoughts. And then the last one is not having life purpose, feeling
Mhm.
that you're not here, you just float through life, you have no purpose, starting to question, why am I here? And I chose this topic because this is something I had to overcome in my own life. And it's something that plagued me for a long time. And I would mask it with really trying my best to be busy. And for a period in my life, I was a single mother for 10 years. And all I did was I was feeling like I was jumping into the deep end, and the only thing I could do was to swim. And then things changed for me. And suddenly I started to question myself a lot about, but why am I here? And I had that in my head so many times. And then I got diagnosed with cancer. And it was during that time that I questioned that more than anything else. And after my treatment, and I I just kept myself extremely busy. I had a business. The business did really not, it was just not in my heart. And adding all the physical problems on top of that, it was difficult for me. And I would go to bed at night. I like to take a bath, and sometimes that's a time for me to reflect on my day. And I would go lie in the bathtub, and I would say, but why am I here? It was just another wasted day.
Mhm.
And I would go to bed and I would struggle to sleep. I would feel depressed. I would have all these dark thoughts. And I would wake up in the morning and just feel like I have no purpose. And there came a day when I just couldn't go on like that anymore. Yesterday I posted, or last night late, I posted something on our Facebook group, The Hopenning, and it is from the Lord of the Rings. And the character Gandalf, who said, all we have to do is decide what to do with the time that is given to us. And that is something that is also very close to my heart, because in that pivotal moment in my life, I had to decide, what is my purpose? And the right person showed up in my life at the right time. And I was challenged to really dig deep and to start to really investigate myself and my heart, and what is it that I would really love. I was in my 50s, and what would I really love for the rest of my life? What would make me feel as if I have purpose? And those looping thoughts was going so strongly in my head that I did not even feel that I could dare to express it out loudly. And through the help I got, which is what you and I do today, I got to a point where I dared to dream.
Mm.
I dared to start a dream for myself. I dared to start to express it. And I think that was the biggest problem for me, to say out loud what I would love to do. And I was convinced people will judge me, people will laugh at me, people would kind of say, but who do you think you are? I was convinced my dream was way too big for me because I wasn't worthy. So it
Mhm.
was kind of a combination of those looping thoughts combined with, well, maybe I'm, yeah, how dare I, I just don't have a purpose. Maybe I'm just not good enough to have a purpose. And it took me a lot of work, a lot of years to get to the point where I not only expressed it, but I started to take very significant steps towards making that a reality. Now, my dream was really to help people, to give people hope. As weird as it sounds, born out of my hopeless situation was this thought and this desire that I really want to help people. And now I look back and I look at where my life is today. I go to bed at night pretty much exhausted. I lie in the bathtub and I would say to myself, wow, this was a wonderful day. I did everything I wanted to do. And I would get up in the mornings. In fact, I actually don't like to sleep because, man, I want to live. Life is just wonderful. And that brings me to another story. My father had a friend, and if you think of the character Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh, he was always like that. And he was in his 40s when he had a heart attack, and they did a triple bypass at that point in his life, and it was a very traumatic experience for him. And in a sense, he had this attitude of, well, this is the end for me. And when he went for his final checkup at the surgeon said to him, okay, I have a prescription for you. And he gave me a letter addressed to him. He said, go home, open it, read it, do it. And when this guy went home and he opened that letter, it was only one word was written on it, and it said, love. And I think
Oh,
sometimes we can all be busy dying, or we can be busy living. And something I'm passionate about, and I think one of my biggest asks at my crossroad in life was, I want to live. I want to live my full potential. I've gone through many years in my life where I lived to survive, where like I said, I was just in the deep end trying to swim, and it was difficult to even come up for air. And I didn't live my full potential because I didn't even recognize my full potential. I did not feel I'm worthy of that. I didn't feel I was good enough. I
so
felt I would be judged. I felt like an imposter.
so you had a cancer scare. You had a cancer scare, and do you think that was the turning point in your life?
Yeah, well, it was a diagnosis, so not just a scare. I had two tumors in one of my breasts, and I had to get a mastectomy. And it was difficult. And in Canada, with our healthcare system, there was a period of time of just waiting, and
Mm.
it was really an uncertain time for me. And I ended up going through a lot of trauma. And I remember one of the doctors I finally connected with told me that I'm in the 911, call 911, I'm dying phase. And because we get very influenced by our what we have available to us today, and one of that is movies and media. And I always remember the movie Stepmom, where we saw Susan Sarandon's character who had breast cancer. And the day she went to the doctor, and the doctor told her, you have cancer, which meant you are dying.
Mhm.
And that is really where my head was. I was dying. And it was really difficult. And then you get this diagnosis. I got it all on paper. And then I would start to translate it. My daughter at that point was in health sciences. She would translate it for me. She would go to the library that was available to her, that was not available to me, and say, oh, that means this. And all that did was to give me more fear. And that was, in a sense, I would say, a pivotal moment for me at the beginning of it anyway, because there was a point where I was so down, where I thought, but I'm not done. I'm not ready to go. I feel in my soul, in my core, that I still have stuff to do. I'm not done. And I think the biggest thing is that absolute desire to help people. But at that point, I wasn't ready to express it yet. And I had to go through all the physical recovery. And yes, in retrospect, there's so much they do for people like me today that it's not a death sentence. But you don't know that. So you go through all the fears. And even now today, when I have to go for my yearly exams, I have to fight very hard to not go back into a state of fear, because the day when they kept coming back for more scans and more scans and more scans, and finally the radiologist walking into the room and saying, yeah, there's something not right. You need to go for a biopsy. I still have flashbacks of that every time I go back for my scans. So it's just fighting that and knowing that, no, I believe that we are the sculptors of our lives. And I also think of Nelson Mandela, because he was very strong on that. We're writing the story of our life. And you watch the movie Invictus, that was the theme of it. We are writing the story of our life. So what is the story of my life?
Mhm.
So I knew I was here for a reason. So I don't know about you, Fran, but in my practice today, I encounter a lot of women around our age, middle ages, who they have seen the kids grow up. And you're a mom, you know how it feels. We give a lot for our kids. Our kids, in a sense, become a purpose for us. We help them grow up, we teach them, we care for them. We love having them around most of the time until they become teenagers. That was just a joke. But anyway, we and then they move out. Then they become adults, they get their own lives. And I see that a lot of people at that point feel like, but what now? And like people refer to it as the empty nest syndrome. And I feel a lot of women our age get to that point where they are, what am I going to do now? Why am I here? And I've seen depression kick in. And I've seen a lot of people, for many different reasons, starting to say, wow, I'm now in the second half of my life. What am I going to do? And I think that's when people start to reflect a lot, and when having a purpose is something that is becoming very important. So I asked my scientist husband last night, if I talk to you about what does it mean to have a purpose? And I got a complete scientific rundown of that. And it kind of made me laugh, because we have such different views on a lot of things. But he brought up some very important things as well, because he said it's going to depend on who you ask. Because if I ask my 24-year-old son today, what is the purpose of your life? I'm going to get a completely different answer than if I ask my client with depression, what is the purpose of your life?
Mhm. Yeah, I'd like to relate a little story. And it has to do with what your father's friend, right? When he had his heart attack so young. Uh, my mom had 11 very healthy children. And then she didn't have children for 11 years. For 11 years, she didn't have any kids. And then she had her 12th child at the age of 46. And my little brother, Bobby, was born with Down syndrome. And my mom had another purpose, right? For 11 siblings, she had a purpose of raising all these kids who were, like lockstep, all in age. And then this big gap of time. And then Bobby was born. And my mom really believed that he would outlive her, right? So she had to get him ready to have a life without her. Well, it turns out that my little brother died at the age of 13
I'm so sorry.
when I know it's horrible. So my mom was not quite, I guess she would have been not quite 60. And at that point, uh, within a year or two, she developed heart problems.
Mm.
And she ended up having a heart attack. Well, she ended up having stents put in, right, to prevent a heart attack because her heart got so weak. And her bad heart eventually caused more problems within her body. And when she passed away, she had cancer in her body, but it wasn't the cancer that ultimately took her. It was her heart. Her heart stopped beating. So our life purpose, if like my mother, she had given her whole life to her family, and then she gave her whole second part of her life to this child who didn't live long enough. And so for my mom, absolutely, that dream, we envision that dream that you talked about, how we envision how our life will be. It didn't turn out for her, and she didn't have a different dream to replace it with, right?
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying about women our age, you are absolutely dead on with that. It is we wrap our whole lives in our family, and we forgot that our own life is going to always be there, even
Yeah.
when the family is out of the nest.
If we cannot dare to dream, and if we don't believe that we are good enough to even have dreams for ourselves, then it's become really difficult to think even of the future. And I think one of my biggest problems, I was so discontented with myself because I've always felt that there is more to me than just surviving. I've always felt that there's something in me that's still driving me, that's bigger than what I'm allowing to come out. I felt that I have potential, but then I had these looping thoughts like, who do you think you are? How dare you think that? And that was the tough part, to overcome that. And I before I became an RTT practitioner, I was a life coach, and I still incorporate a lot of that into my practice. And if any of my clients are watching this, and I've done this with them in our consultation, then they will know exactly what I'm talking about. In the coaching, I've learned that you basically teach people to dream for themselves. And you look
Mm,
at 4 categories in life: health and wellness, relationships, and that can mean any relationships, not just romantic. That can mean friendships, because also when you're older in life, some people still really want romance, but other people are like, I'm okay without it. So relationships are really important. So that means look at it in a wider spectrum. And some people may already be happily married, but they still feel alone. They feel they need bigger connection outside of that. They feel isolated, especially now. And then the third one is your vocation. What are you doing with your days? What is keeping you so busy at night? You are just exhausted. You feel like, today I have truly lived. And then the fourth one is time and money freedom.
mm,
Do you have enough money so that that creates time for you to say, well, I'm taking a month off and I'm going on a cruise, or I want to go on this trip with somebody. Do you have that freedom? So what is it going to take to dream for that for yourself? And our minds cannot wrap itself around it. If I tell somebody, let's ask you right now, what would you love right now? People say, well, that cannot happen. And then we say, okay, let's imagine that we are in a time machine and this is 5 years from now. I have a magic wand and every single dream comes true. There's no limit. Everything you ever wanted is available to you. Now let's go through those categories. Close your eyes and tell me, what is your ultimate dream? And it takes a lot for people to actually allow themselves to dream that. It takes a lot for people to actually acknowledge that, well, I actually really would like to become a pastry chef. And why not? Because, I have to keep I have to keep the fires burning. I'm older. It's just not available to me. But why not? Do you know that it's not available to you? Why not? And then one of the things I teach is that take steps every single day towards that. I've encountered somebody recently, a young person who doesn't understand that in my life it became a matter of, I really desire to live my full purpose. It caused me depression not to do that. And I know that's something that probably will come with age, but that I've been hammering on this for myself for the longest time. I want to live my full potential. I really want to. And it's still something that drives me today.
You know what I like about the time machine, you kind of can disattach from the laundry,
Right.
from the bills that are on the table, from the fact that Christmas is around the corner and I haven't got X and O's done yet for all this Christmas hype. And yet you can get in a time machine and close that door and Zoom, you're 5 years away, right? And you really are, you're untethered. You're untethered from the constraints that we have at this point in our lives right now. And we can look in 5 years and we can say, yeah, I want to be doing this in my life, and I want to have this, and I want to have that, and I want those kinds of relationships. And then you can start dreaming when you don't have to be tethered back with the mundane of the everyday. The cell phone ringing and the emails to catch up on and the deadlines to meet and all of that other stuff. It's like that freedom. How do you get them to a place where they can actually do that dreaming? Do you have a special meditation, or do you take them, do you have a little
I'll
bit
just
of a
use the
walk
power
with
of your
them?
imagination. I don't know if you saw about Marissa Peer, who trained us. She just came out with a new book called Tell Yourself a Better Lie.
Mm-hmm.
And she used that in our training a lot. So if you think of those looping thoughts, that radio station, that's telling you, but you know what? Who do you think you are? Nobody will eat your pastries. Like, who do you think you are? You're too old. You cannot even stand that long. How do you think? And you're just going to eat that all the time. You're going to become fat. And who do you think you are? You think your baking is great because you're a pig that just wants to eat all the time. So do you really think other people want to eat your stuff? So those are examples of looping thoughts that can go through a person's mind. And you know what? In reality, they are lies. There are lies that your subconscious mind has been telling yourself for many, many years. If you are an engineer, a structural engineer, and you have to build buildings, your job is to make sure that the structure that you're building, say it's a bridge, is really built with good material so that it at some point does not start to go wrong and collapse. We watched a show on history the other day, and it's when big things go wrong. goes wrong. And it was about bridge collapses. And then I cannot remember where the first one was, but it was literally about that. There was something that there are very strong plates that they use to keep these, man, I cannot even remember the names. If my husband was here, he would laugh at me. But it's a triangular shape that keeps the structure very secure. But they have these very strong steel plates that keep them in place. And in this specific bridge, and it killed like 70 something people when it collapsed, they didn't install the right thickness of those plates. And because those plates are foolproof, nobody ever checked them. And in one of the last inspections, they saw that it's a bit warped, but they didn't really pay attention to that because they never failed. So eventually, there's a lot of things that went wrong and that bridge collapsed. And that to me was a great analogy of things that can go wrong in our lives. And if that steel plate is this looping thought that goes through your mind and you build this beautiful bridge, there's only so much you can take. At some point, you may just collapse. And so let's tell ourselves a better lie. Let's tell ourselves that this is absolutely 100% possible.
So if I have a looping thought and my dream is to be a travel guide, let's say that. Let's say I really like the outdoors and I think that I would become a real good travel guide. And so I have my vision, I have my dream, I go through all my four things. I have this idea. But I get that looping thought. I get that negative thought. So why do you think that you know so much? You're just you've just been lucky, or what if this happened? All those what ifs, we talked about that before. What would you do at that point? What would you say to that part of you that's doing the looping? Because it is part of us, our ego or whatever you want to choose to call it. It is part of us that's telling us those negative thoughts. How would you stop that? How would you stop the loop?
Well, I think in the work that we do, if it's a client of mine, I would go see, where did that thought come from? Where was that seed planted in you that made that grow into a very strong plant inside your mind? And go and change the thought on that level. Change the thought on the subconscious level. And in the example you give, I'm just going to be very creative here. Maybe when you were in school, you had a teacher who said, oh, but you're not strong enough to do things like this. Like, you should just give up. And suddenly there's this thought that comes in your subconscious mind remembers, oh, but Fran, you know what Mr. Smith told you when you were 8 years old, that you're actually not strong enough to do things like this. So you remember that. And then there's another incident that happened and it builds on that. So I call it the water that you give that seed so it can shoot roots. And then there's maybe another scene. That's something that happened in your life. Maybe you tried something physical and you broke your foot at some point. And now it's like the fertilizer that turned that seed into a full-grown plant. And every time when there's this desire in your heart thinking, I actually want to do that. So to me, it's let's find something that will let that plant wither. And it's to tell it a better story. So in our sessions, you know that we go and we heal that thought on a subconscious level. We would even go back to Mr. Smith and say to him, oh yeah, I'll show you. So I love that. And that's part of our sessions that we do. But then also part of what we do is that neuro-linguistic programming. So if we can start to tell ourselves better thoughts, if you can give yourself a pep talk every day. I love on my phone, I love the function of the voice recording, because on my voice recording, I have done many recordings for myself where I would tell myself, you're here for a reason. You are loved. You are protected. You are excellent in what you do. So I would say that that's a new looping thought. And then I would listen to that many, many times. Like you offered your anxiety meditation last week. That's the same idea. You give yourself or the person you work with better thoughts. And then you have a choice. In my own case, if I made that recording to myself, I have to listen to it to make that my new story. I have to make the unfamiliar familiar. And the only reason you really can do that is through repetition.
Repetition is the key,
Yeah.
because from the time that child was 8 years old and heard Mr. Smith's voice repeatedly in his mind until the age of whatever, that's repetition that created that channel that the river has flown in for this many years, right? It makes me think of telling ourselves that better lie. Marissa Peer talks about lie, cheat, and steal.
Yeah.
So you lie to your mind, you cheat your you cheat your thoughts, and you steal back your self-confidence, right? And so there was a boy, this is interesting that we're talking about this now. There was a boy in my room. It's hockey season, right? And where I live, this is what kids do. They play hockey, they're in tournaments, they're in teams and whatnot. And the one boy was telling me he got suspended from 4 games. The next 4 games he's suspended from. And I'm like, what did you do? Well, the game was over, and this boy from the opposing team, when they're shaking hands, right? The boy from the opposing team told him that their team sucked. And so he pushed him. He pushed that kid, and he got in trouble, 4-game suspension. And I'm like, okay, interesting. But you know what you need to do next time? And he was full of buts, right? It was like, but he did this, but he said that. And I'm like, okay, so you know that when you say, I'm sorry, but you're really the butthead, right? You become a butthead because your sorry means nothing. Next time someone says that to you, next time someone does something like tells you suck, or tells you that you're a failure, or tells you, just say, I'm happy for you that you won. What are they going to do? It stops the negative talk, right? And so when you tell me about telling yourself a better lie, if Mr. Smith told me that I'm not strong enough, and I have that looping thought, I can say to myself, I can say, when I was 8 years old, I wasn't strong enough, but now I'm 43, or now I'm 59, and I am strong enough.
And that's not me anymore.
That's not me.
Yeah.
That'll never be me.
Yeah.
That'll
So
never be me again.
You bring up an excellent example in that in sports teams. And we have all seen excellent movies where the underdog is doing so poorly, and then they get this new coach, and maybe he's been an alcoholic and his life wasn't working out, but it's kind of a last resort. And he comes in and he just starts to give those kids new suggestions. He starts to talk them up. He starts to tell them new looping thoughts. You can do this. You can do this. Go show them whatever it is. And this, a lot of these movies are based on true stories. A lot of them. So this coach can be a new looping thought. He can build up those kids to the point where they know that there's something better available to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is exactly what we do. We are that. And I think that is why RTT is so profoundly impactful on sports teams. And that has been proven so many times. When you can go and just tell your team members better stories, tell yourself better lies. And one thing that I really wanted to touch on today that came to my attention very recently was when you have been, and it comes back again to a certain age. And Fran, I'm going to use you as an example. You are retiring in June from being a teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you made a plan.
Mm-hmm.
You gave yourself something to do beyond your career.
Mm-hmm.
But you know how many people do not do that? I used to work with seniors, and a lot of them struggled. They become isolated. They don't have a purpose anymore. So it was my job to be the fun lady. So I had the drama group, and I had the choir, and I had to create fun trips for them to go. And I took them to Las Vegas. I still think I'm traumatized from that. But I took a bus full of seniors to Las Vegas. It was funny. And anyway, when people have had careers all their lives, and they have worked really hard, and they became the doctor who worked themselves to the bone, and now their retirement is creeping up. Do you know how many of them struggle with depression and a lack of purpose? They're losing their identity. So what now? And so this is where we come in.
Mm-hmm.
We create their dream.
Mm-hmm.
We help them to dare to dream, to have a roadmap, to be the author of their new story.
Yeah, let's look at ourselves in 5 years.
Right.
Let's see, what do you want to be doing in 5 years?
Right.
Let's
And
dream it.
once you can trick your brain into believing that that is possible for you, and you know, not you. I used to work. One of the seniors ladies I used to work with. She was in her 40s, a stay-at-home mom, when her husband had a stroke, a devastating stroke, and he was in a wheelchair. And she helped her children at that age to grow up. She became pretty much a single mom. And then she helped her husband every day. She was his only caregiver. And then he died. And then she decided, well, what now? So she went to university and she became a physicist, I believe. I think it was a physicist. And I think she was then in her 50s. And up to a few years ago, around the age of 80, she would still go and do summer jobs at the university.
Yes.
So you're
And
never too old to dream. Like I can give you many examples of people who are dreaming. My husband is dreaming of his retirement. He has a long list of things he wants to do. And I love that. But people also think, you know what? I've worked so hard. What now? Can I write a book? Can I do this? So you find them a new purpose. But then there's also the purpose, I think, in my case, it's almost on a spiritual level. It's almost on, why was I created?
And I think for women, a lot of times women tend to move in that direction rather than, oh, I'm going to be sitting at the lake and fishing and working on projects like men tend to be more inclined to do. Women are more inclined to become people within the community that are more involved in the helping the homeless, or the food bank, or the charitable organizations. Women tend to move in that direction, and that's where they tend to find their purpose more often. I find, like, not just in my clients, but it also with what I see in general. The church, that if you're in a church, you tend to move more into church positions where you can help the community more, and that is always an option as well.
Right.
What would
It's a very interesting subject because when I was working with seniors, I did a study once on different generations, and the baby boomer generation really wanted to feel that they made a difference. And that's where projects like Habitat for Humanity started because people had something that made them feel I'm making a difference. I'm contributing on the larger scale of things. And
Mhm.
and you see a lot more people today really volunteering at the homeless shelter or in Calgary here, the Mustard Seed, or even these senior centers, they're nonprofits. So they function on people volunteering. And that's wonderful projects, you know, when you get older for people to stay involved. Because
Mhm.
a lot of things people do then is they give up, they become isolated. And I don't know, I am maybe completely off with this, but in my observation, a lot of times that's when I think the way I would describe it, if you in your body run, and you're a runner, I know that. So you run a marathon and you train for a marathon every single day. Your muscles have to slowly get used to that, but then you're fit. You run that marathon every day. And now you decide, you know what? I've had enough. I'm not running a marathon every day. What's going to happen with your muscles?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it's the same with the brain. If you have been running a marathon in your work every single day, and you say, okay, I'm done, I'm retiring, what's happening with those neurons in your brain? And I think that's
Mhm.
something to really carefully think about. So making a plan, having a dream, finding your purpose is something that's extremely important on many levels. As my
Yeah.
husband said, this is a very multifaceted subject. It's not just one thing.
You know, I think about how we can make our weakness our strength. So you had your cancer and you had depression because of that. You've also had other issues in your life that make you an expert on certain things. You're an expert
I'm
on
an
it,
expert
but
by default.
by default, you're an expert by whatever happened to you, right? Randomly or divine purpose, who knows what's going on. But you have now made that your strength because you have that ability to communicate with people who are also going through the same thing. It's similar with mine. You and I have both been single parents. We get it. We know what it's like to be a single parent, and now that's become our strength.
Mhm.
Who would ever have thought that a weakness, a failed marriage, raising kids on your own can become something you're an expert in and become your strength, or an illness within your body can now become something that you can give hope to others for, or not having purpose now has become something that we know what we're talking about because we've been there, right? And so as if you're a viewer right now, think about something that's happened to you that you always considered a bad thing. If we change that story too, we can you, me, we all can create something good out of it. We can take that little bad seed, right?
Mhm.
The bad seed, and we can create a sunflower, or we can create whatever out of it. We can't change what happened, but we can change how we look at it, which I think is so beneficial to
Indeed.
whatever kind of situation we might be going through right now.
One of my favorite quotes, and that's something that I use a lot, and I don't know really who first came up with it, but the first time I read it was in the book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, You Are the No, Becoming Supernatural, where he was telling the story of Anna, and I can highly recommend any of Joe Dispenza's works. But there was a quote in there that said, "What if the worst thing that happened with you turned out to be the best?"
Right.
And in a very big way, that's how I saw cancer. Because yes, that started me to think that seed was planted, but my life is not over. I'm here for a reason. And then after that, when I was struggled with I'm just a waste of space, and I started to change my life, it really became my reality. And you know, when COVID happened, my husband and I said that a lot because we made a dream come true. Something we never knew we would be able to do at this point in life. We thought it's still about 10 years off, was to go and spend more time at our cottage.
Mm-hmm.
And when COVID happened, and because I still had a bit of a health issue going on and the uncertainty of everything fell in place for us to go there and to spend 18 months pretty much nonstop there because everything was canceled. And what happened with us also was we never thought we would be able to work remotely. And both of us were able to start to work remotely. So we often say what it was one of the worst things that could happen in our lifetimes, but it really turned out very well for us. We had a wonderful 18 months. We had a dream come true. I grew the biggest vegetable garden. Almost too much for me to manage by myself. I have jars of pickles and relishes that will keep us going for a couple of years. And I think everybody's getting one for Christmas this year too. But it's something that I always dreamt about. It was just being there in nature, seeing the deer running through the yard and going for these long walks every day. Oh man, sitting in the hot tub looking at the stars. It was just so amazing. So we lived in gratitude for something that went wrong almost every day.
I had an interesting conversation with a friend last week because I was going through a bit of my own anxiety last week. And she reminded me again that I need to give up control. I need to give up the idea that I should be able to control this. And she made an interesting comment about just breathe, Ran, just breathe, just release it. Release it to whoever you call God, creator, the universe, just release it and sit back and say, okay, I give it to you. And I'm going to sit back and watch you create the magic.
Isn't that lovely?
It's wonderful. And I did that, like I repeated that to myself. Okay. And I call my creator God. Okay, God, I'm going to do that. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to release it to you. And I'm going to sit and watch you create the magic with me. And it did. It was amazing. And instead of having that worry and having that anxiety about what I didn't know was coming, there was magic, and it turned out to be way better than what I thought it would have been. So to remind ourselves just to let it go. Sometimes we just have to let it go and believe in an outcome that will be much better than we could have ever expected.
And that's wonderful. Well, Fran, we are just about out of time. So I want to know what you are talking about next week.
Oh, I don't even know what I'm talking about, Marina.
Okay, well, maybe we'll make an announcement on our Facebook group, and I put you on the spot here. Normally we decide before the time, and we did not do that this time. So yes, we'll announce that and give you some time to reflect, and looking forward to it anyway.
I'll wait for an inspiration. I'll wait for some magic.
There you go. Sit back, breathe, and it will come to you.
Yes, sounds great. Well, it's been wonderful getting together with you again, and good luck on this upcoming week. And because it's my last week of school before Christmas, it'll be lots of fun and lots of excitement at school.
Wonderful, and enjoy every moment. It's your last Christmas break as a teacher.
That's right. That's right. It will be. Yeah. So thank you so much, and it's been wonderful being here. God bless. We'll see you next week.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.